Move my coffee. I can see me wearing that. Yeah, I'm gonna shut down my screen, I think. How do I do that? Yeah, screen's out of the way. Show active speaker by thumbnail video.
Good morning. We're going to give our attendees a few more, well, I guess a minute or so to log in, and then we'll get started. Good morning. It is 9 o'clock. We'll get started for everyone that has joined us today. Today's webinar is on asset management, taught by our technical assistance engineer, Jeffrey Scott. Don't know me, I'm Amanda. I'm the communications specialist here at the New York State LTAP Center. David is on vacation. Yay. So first things first, we'll just go over the ground rules. The chat is disabled, but I will be putting in 2 handouts, so you can click them there. If you don't have access to them, you can send me an email at ael234@cornell.edu, and I'll send you the PDF versions. If you have a question, you can either, well, don't raise your hand. Jeff might ask a question, say like, how many people have street signs? You can raise your hand that way, just a quick poll. If you do have a question, you can throw it in the Q&A, and I will let Jeff know. And then for PDH, if you're interested in PDH questions, you can get 1 for being on today's webinar. You have to be on for 90% of the webinar, and only the person registered can get the PDH certificate. If you're joining us from another state, you'll have to check with your local LTAP center. And those should be going out later this week or early next week. And then I think we'll move into our 2 questions. So the first one is I work for. All the questions will be done in Zoom today. So your choices are I work for the town, county, city or village, state or federal, tribal, private, or the weekend. Gets a few more seconds to answer. Beautiful. Looks like town is 22%, county 26%, village. Got a good group. Nobody for the weekend though. It's always the one I look for.
Still Tuesday.
Still Tuesday. And then our second question. My job is administration, highway superintendent or DPW commissioner, engineer, field crew, board member, or none of the above. If it is none of the above, you can throw that in the Q&A and I'll read it out. And it looks like we have majority engineers today. And with that, I will turn it over to Jeff and enjoy your webinar.
All righty. Guess I'll close that off on my screen. I don't know where it is, but morning. My name is Jeff Scott. I am, as Amanda said, I'm a technical assistance engineer here at Cornell Local Roads. And today we're going to talk about asset management. I guess we got to get this thing working here. There we go. All right, assets. An asset is basically a resource with an economic value. There's 2 types of assets that we've got. That they classify them in. It's there's current assets, which include cash and inventory and accounts receivable, kind of liquidation assets there. And then there's fixed assets, and those are what we're going to be talking about today. These are assets that include land and buildings and equipments and vehicles, essentially assets that have the ability to depreciate without really necessarily losing their value, useful value, I should say. And over time, as age sets in, these fixed assets tend to depreciate in their value. As I mentioned, it doesn't necessarily doesn't necessarily mean that the asset itself is diminishing. It's just that over time and age, it's going to depreciate in some capacity. So I guess when we talk about asset management, why do we care? Well, on the local level, local highway financing, most of the funding that comes for any of the highway departments are typically local money. As you can see in this graph, 89% of the funding that the town uses is supported by local taxes. In some cases, you'll get 10% from the state. Again, there's other different sizes, and that's when you're going out getting a lot of the resources, and then the 1% sometimes with the federal monies. But again, they come with different requirements as you go, and a lot of the towns just stick with the local funding. And because it comes out of our tax dollars, we need to be conscious of what we're doing. So asset management, if you take care of something, whether it's right or wrong, you're doing some sort of asset management. So we all do some sort of type of that. It doesn't, asset management at its core really doesn't change how you, the current practices of an agency. What you want to do is try to refine it and improve them. The idea is to get the best bang for your buck. Some of the asset management practices, some of the management practices that are out there. We got the last year's budget, essentially taking what you did last year, previous budgets, and arbitrarily and incrementally increasing or decreasing what you're going to do. It's not necessarily the best way. It's not really a plan. It's just going through the motions. You get the squeaky wheel. That's where budgets are developed by responding to emergency demands or citizen complaints. Again, not a very good use of your funding. If you're spending all your money, particularly on a roadway, if you're spending all your money right up front on one road, the whole network's going to suffer because of that. There's a standard program. Basically, you establish a program based on periodic maintenance. Again, example, maybe a seal coats every 5 years or overlays every 10 years. The worst first, and in some assets, worst first might be the way to go. And we'll talk about that with coming through. But when it comes to pavements, worst first is usually the poorest way of managing your roads. That's where basically it seems logical that you're going to go out and fix the worst roads that are out there. But from a financial aspect, you're spending all those funds on one road, as I mentioned a little bit a second ago. You're spending all those funds on one road, as meanwhile, the rest of the roads that could be salvaged, sealed, and protected are going to go to waste. They're just going to fall apart over time. There's always the political pressure, using political considerations to establish programs and budgets. That doesn't really take into account the needs of the assets that you're managing. It does satisfy the politicians, but it doesn't necessarily take care of the needs of what the assets are. And then there's the gut feel. A lot of highway superintendents work on the gut feel, and that's based off of their knowledge and their experience, and some of their experience of some of their employees. And in many cases, if you've been there a long time, that gut feel is right in line with what you ought to be doing. But not always. Again, in a lot of these, you don't necessarily have a reason. You can't justify what you're doing. You can't explain on paper what you're doing. It's just what you feel like doing or what you're being told to do. So even though you're taking care of things, it might not be the proper approach. But we'll go through some of these examples and just kind of get a better idea of what I'm talking about. So with asset management, I said basically if you're managing something, you're going to have to make decisions, deciding on what's going to happen in the future. How are you going to maintain that piece of equipment over time, or how are you going to maintain that building over time? What needs to be done first? How much is it going to cost? Where is that funds going to go? Where is it going to get the best bang for your buck? But to make those decisions, you really got to know what you're doing or what you have. A lot of cases, we've talked to people and they don't really know how many culverts they have. For better or worse, it's just the fact of life. So it's again, knowing what you have is going to help you get that baseline of what you need to fix and maintain. So once you decide on those maintenance projects, you need to, once you find out what you have, you're going to make decisions on which ones are going to come first, because nobody has the funding to actually replace all of that in one shot. It'd be nice if we could, and then we could just maintain things. That's not how life works. So again, you got to plan out what do you got to do, what's going to happen in the future, what do you want to protect, what are you going to try to preserve. You got to prioritize that work, prioritize, and that way you can basically, again, talk about the best bang for your buck. Then you schedule it and then you actually do it. And that's one of the more critical things. You can plan till the cows come home, but if you don't do anything with those plans, you're just kind of going through the motions. There are benefits if you're doing the assets management, a proper assets management approach. For one, if you know what you're responsible for and you're doing inspections on them, you have an understanding what they are, what their costs, what the replacement costs are. Because you know what they are and what the costs are, you can better plan for that, so you can better manage them. It's helped better decisions when it comes to the budget process. If you've got everything mapped out on paper, so to speak, it's easier to justify what you want to do. It's easier to promote that budget process, explain what the budget process is going to be, why you're doing the work you're doing. And ultimately, the goal is to extend the life of those existing assets. So some of the decisions we got to go through, there's, again, depending on what you want to do, but maintenance decisions are going to come up. Somebody's got to decide that. And if you're the manager, that's going to fall on you. So again, where should you focus that maintenance? Again, having an idea what you have is going to help do that, and what kind of conditions they're in. If you have funding changes, if you lose a portion of your budget because of budget cuts, how are you going to react to that? If you're just kind of going nilly-willy, you're not going to really have a plan, not going to be able to adjust, you're not going to focus on those needs that are a priority. Again, what's the most cost effective? That's one of the things with pavement. A lot of times people have a poor road and they'll put 2 inches of asphalt over it and it'll be good for a couple of years, and then it's right back to where it was. It's not necessarily a cost-effective maintenance repair. Again, the idea is to spend that money more cost effectively by having a plan in place. And what is your plan over the next 5 years? Do you have a plan for the next 5 years? Can you justify what you're going to do, and can you work toward that? Maybe you're building toward a major improvement, but you can do over the course of those years, you can do minor improvements that will facilitate that major improvement over those years. So again, knowing what you have is important. Our former director, Lynn Irwin, used to say is, how do you know you don't know if you don't know you don't know? Which is kind of a quagmire, but if you don't know what you have, you can't plan for it, you can't anticipate it, you can't do anything. So just, again, having an idea of what you have, having that, having those assets inventoried. So it's an important thing. So, and the question is, what are you responsible for? There's a lot of things out there that as a highway department that are you may be responsible for. It may be something as minor as cemeteries, but again, maybe signs and guide rail and drainage buildings, your equipment, your hand tools, shop equipment, your buildings. I think I said that. But new pavements are one of the more expensive ones. So the most what would you say? Probably the biggest asset that might be here with the most funding applied to it. So with signs, do you know how many do you have? You know where they are. Have you done a check on them? Have you been taking a look at them at night? You know if the vegetation's growing over them. Just those simple inspections can go pretty effectively. Guide rails. And yes, it's guide rail in New York, not guard. They don't guard anything, they just guide you. Again, there's 3 or 4 states in the Northeast that actually use guide rail for legal reasons. So when you're referring to the guide rails, just understand what you're doing. Have you inspected them? Are the posts properly in place? Is the height of the guide rail, here I am doing it, the height of the guide rail proper? And as you layer up those asphalt layers, and the guide rail remains in place over those 10 years or 15 years, as that asphalt increases, you're decreasing the elevation of that rail. If the rail gets too low, some of the larger vehicles hit that with the front tire and they just launch. Again, drainage structures as well. We got pavement. Some of the drainage structures as well. You have manholes or catch basins. Have you looked in them? I've done a lot of inspections for municipalities where you look into the manhole and you step back because there's not really much there. So just understanding that, looking in them, checking them for sediment and silt as well, if they're manhole for drainage storm structures. Again, some of the things that you have out there. Machinery and vehicles, again, whether it's a mower or a loader or truck or whatever it is, can you afford to work without it? Is there a regular maintenance plan? Do you spend more time fixing it than you do using it? Uh, there is a point where it's you get reach that point of diminishing returns, and it might be cheaper just to buy a new one than it is to keep maintaining and fixing them. Well, again, some of the ones that are out there: guide rails, drainage structures, equipment, vehicles, buildings, and then there's, like I said, there could be anything else out there that you may be responsible for parks if you don't have a park department. Cemeteries, as I mentioned. So a lot of things that you could be responsible. Some towns actually are responsible for water systems as well. So again, knowing what you're responsible for is going to help you determine where that funding needs to be. And again, focusing on the conditions is going to help you determine what should be done first. So the question is, where do I start? How do I start an asset management plan? Well, first and foremost, you need to know what you're responsible for. So developing an inventory of your assets. Get a list of what you have. Maybe identify some of the attributes that go with it. Again, we'll touch on this coming up. Then you do an inspection on them. What condition are they in? Are they in great condition, or are they just really just about holding on? And from that, make a plan and then implement the plan. Again, one of the more critical parts is implementing the plan. The inventory, typically they're the most common attributes that don't necessarily change over time for the life of the asset. And it's important to realize that some items some of those assets are safety critical. If you get a culvert or something that's totally rusted out and it's losing support, you're not going to wait till you fix the road. You should do that probably pretty critical. So if a school bus goes through something like that, the liability increases substantially. Again, we'll talk about some of the safety critical ones as we're going through here, but again, just being aware that some things can't be put off in some situations. Culverts, as I mentioned, may not be high in the priority list, but with limited staff and time. But it doesn't diminish their importance of having that inventory and knowing where they are. A lot of times a culvert can go for many years. And then just just for a little bit of rusting or something happens, that culvert can fail in just a short amount of time with high water flow. They come in a variety of shapes and sizes, but again, corrosion and debris buildup and scour all can cause a culvert to rapidly fail. So it's important to go and do those inspections. It's even more important to know what you have. So some of the inventory things, obviously, in many of these highway related things, you're going to want that road name, maybe a culvert ID that specifically identifies each individual culvert. You want to be able to locate it, whether it's through GPS or stationing from one end of the road. Again, so you can find it if it's frozen or the ground is covered with snow. It gives you the opportunity of finding it. Is there a skew to it? How far off perpendicular is it? Maybe the depth of cover. If you're looking at maintaining or upgrading or replacing any of these culverts, if they're very deep, it's going to cost us substantially more than it is if it's only 12 inches below the surface of the pavement. Now, the number of pipes as well, the length of the pipe, the width and height of the pipe, if it's not a circular pipe, the shape of the pipe, type of material that it's constructed of. Different material have different lifespans. Many parts of the state, galvanized steel has a life of about 10 years. And on the other hand, the heavy duty polyethylene, the HDPE black pipe, can last many years. And then an installation date. And then with all of this, a diagram is going to be very useful. All this stuff is going to be really critical should you have one of those disastrous rainstorms or whatever it is where it washes the culverts out and you're requesting funding from FEMA. If you don't have this information, there's a good chance you're not going to get FEMA support. So just having that information on hand is going to be important. And there's other things as well. Maybe if you're in an MS4, you want to identify the speedies outfall, maybe an ID number. Maybe if you've got the opportunity, you can identify the watershed that's contributing to that culvert. There's a stream, maybe that you can identify what that stream might be. Maybe it's a trout stream that's going to help you determine when and where and how you can replace that. What the receiving waters are, where is it going? Is it going to go into a lake or a pond? That might be useful as far as when you start monitoring the pollutants that are going through there. And down in the Hudson Valley, the aquatic organism passage, essentially how well does an organism traverse through that culvert? If it's a perched elevated waterfall coming out of that pipe, you can just assume nothing's going to get through it. If they're coming down, then they might get through it, but then they fall. Nothing's going back up. So again, there's a lot of things you can keep track of. Again, the culvert inventory, just keep it simple at this point and keep the basics and get what you need to know. As part of our drainage class, we've got a culvert inventory form, inspection form. It's pretty basic, but it goes through the basics of it. Again, municipality, date of inspection, weather, milepost, culvert number, stream name, shape of the pipe, material size, all those things are identified. And then with the inspection, you can go through how's the channel, how's the culvert pipe itself, how the roadway above it. Again, just having some of that information is going to be useful when it comes to, and then of course a sketch can be useful when it comes to justifying the need for a new culvert and having FEMA reimburse you for that. So part of the inspections, again, you want to identify what the distresses are, if there's any kind of damage that's in there. And of course, the date of the inspection. If you go to court, that date of inspection is going to be critical relative to the date of that court or date of an accident. But again, you want to check the shape. If you've got a round culvert and it's squashing down and it's oval shape, you probably have a problem. Scour on either end of the pipe can cause that pipe to wash out. Condition of the pipe, again, that galvanized steel pipes can tend to have a rust on the bottom. Your embankments, maybe you've got a lot of eddies or it's a backup or debris in front of it and it's causing those embankments to fall. The ends of the pipes, again, it might have been damaged for a car accident, maybe it's done when ditching happens. But again, if those ends of those pipes aren't open and free for the water to flow through, it's going to cause backup and you're going to have flooding. Joints, concrete pipes are great. But they tend to come apart after a while. And then they're very difficult to put back together. So keeping an eye on the joints. If they start to separate, you're going to lose debris below your road. You're going to start having potholes and then possibly a total failure. And of course, debris is always one of those regular things. Signs, again, another one. This one I believe is in our sign manual for our traffic sign class. Understanding and knowing what the number of signs you have, which are responsible, what type they are, sizes they are, where they're located, are going to be critical. Signs are critical for communicating dangers and hazards on the road, regulating what the road can, what the driver should be doing, any potential hazards, changes in geometry. So it's critical to maintain them. If you're missing a stop sign, you can almost guarantee if somebody goes through it, you're going to lose your shirt. So again, just having those regular inspections and identifying what you have, and having those records of what you need. And all these forms are a part of that handout that Amanda was talking about. So if you're looking for them, if you can't find them or you can't get them, just let us know. We can get them to you. Again, it might be just a place to start from and you make your own, but again, it's a place to start. So sign inventory, again, you want to know what road it's on. Maybe there's an identification number for it. You want to know what type of sign it is. What hazard, warning, regulatory information. MUTCD has identification numbers that go along with it. The New York State supplement to the MUTCD also has New York designated them with identification numbers and descriptions. Maybe you want to add those in there. It'll help you next time when you got to replace it if you need to. The size and dimensions, colors, legend or the letter sizes, the material that's not only back material, but the face material. Again, a location, so you can find it if it's missing. You're doing inspections and all of a sudden there's not a sign there and there should be one. That'll help you replace it, identify when it needs to be. The side of the road it's on, that's going to be pretty critical as well. What direction does it face? Signs facing south degrade substantially quicker than signs facing north. So just understanding which way it's facing and possibly an installation date. Again, having this inventory is going to be critical. For a lot of it, again, supplement signs too, if you did 20 miles an hour to railroad crossing below. Again, having all that same information is going to help you understand what you have, where you're going, what your plans might be. If things are missing, you're going to replace them. The signs The inventory. As far as part of the inventory, you might want to include the posts. What type of post, number of posts, post size, material, the base type, and installation date. You can see in this picture, that post is pretty haphazard, I would guess. So again, just knowing what you have and being able to plan for it and replace it if it needs to be. Signs are one of those items that are pretty critical as well. Part of that sign inspection should include visibility. Daytime visibility, can you see it during the day? Has the brush grown up and the trees sagged over it? If a sign is covered and an accident occurs, first one they come to is the town or whoever the municipality owns those signs, town, the county, the village, whoever it might be. So keeping those signs clear, doing a regular, maybe once or twice a year, just daytime visible drive by to see what condition whether those signs are visible. Reflectivity readings. Again, the background and the foreground, and then the letters. And that's going to be critical. As per the MUTCD, everybody should have a plan, an inventory and a plan on what they're doing as far as their signs go. What's the sign condition? Is it bent? Is the face damaged? Is it missing, faded, dirty, full of bullet holes? Anything that distorts the message could result as a liability. The sign support post as well. Is it twisted? Is it bent? Is it leaning down? Is it broke? Is it not there? All these things are going to play into part of that inspection program. With as far as the inspection with a lot of the retroreflectivity, the MUTCD has several methods that they agree to that they've tested and planned on. Some aren't as good as others, and some of them take time. They've got the assessments. You actually go out and assess those assessment methods. You go out and actually assess those signs. Calibration sign procedure. Again, you're looking at multiple signs, training your eye to get into it, and then you go out and do an inspection at night. Specific vehicles with heights and their various other parameters. Comparison sign procedure. Basically, you're clipping a piece of a sign that's at or just above the minimum requirements, and then you're comparing the two sign colors to it. If you're curious, we actually have a tech tip on our website that actually allows you or shows you how to develop and create your own comparison sign procedure and panels. Consistent parameters procedure, measured sign retroreflectivity. They're all kind of assessment methods. There's also management methods where you just basically depending on what the manufacturer says, it's going to take, the sign's going to last 15 years. So every 15 years you replace it. Blanket replacements. Okay, you're going to replace all the signs in Ward 1. Next year you do Ward 2. And then there's control signs. Very few people do this. I know Monroe County does it. Is when they put up a sign, when they put up a sign on the road, they put up a sign exactly like it on their site, and then they evaluate how that sign degrades over time. Again, as you can imagine, you can end up with a lot of signs there. Again, some of the critical signs, if these are missing or broken or hidden or covered, you're going to want to take care of them. Key warning signs and regulatory signs to stop and yield. Again, that's super critical. The warnings of those stop and yield signs ahead. Intersections, pedestrian, bicyclists, school crossings. All these signs are critical. If they're missing, you're going to want to replace them as soon as possible. Again, safety critical. If they're not there, it's a potential of a major hazard, and major hazard results in major lawsuits. And once you've taken care of those, then over time, the other warning signs, other regulatory signs, and then guide signs are usually the least important. Guide rail, again, having that inventory. Again, identifying the road. Maybe there's a municipal idea, the type of the pipe, the rail. Is it the W rail, or is it a box beam, or whatever it might be? Again, locating it, starts and ends, identifying the length, the side of the road, maybe the rail ends. You have the boxing glove rail ends, or do you just have the turn down rails? And then an installation. This picture here, I was actually taking pictures of pavement, and I looked over here on this portion over here. I said, oh, that's interesting. So as I was out there looking at those roads, this is what was behind it. So be aware, it may look good from the roadway, but take another look, take a closer look. So part of that inspection, again, looking at the rail conditions, post ends, rail and the post conditions, rail condition, rail ends, identifying any vegetation that might be cut, need to be cut. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the height above the pavement. Equipment and fleet. Again, having that inventory, knowing what you have as far as equipment, sure, you probably have, X amount of pieces of equipment that are useful. But having that documented is going to be critical. In most cases, the equipment should be identified and provided to the DOT every year, but maybe not all of it is in that. So again, identifying the equipment, what type of equipment, is it a loader, is it a backhoe, is it a mower? Data purchase, replacement costs, the life expectancy. From all that, you can determine maybe you should be setting aside X amount so you can place that if it's going to last 15 years, putting aside X amount so you can replace it at that 15-year point. Maybe a repair history, as I mentioned, there's a point of diminishing returns. You spend more time fixing something than it's worth. It's maybe time to get rid of it, get a new one, or another one at the very least. But we also have, you see on the sheet on the right, again, this is, believe this is at a running your highway department, or the workshop. Again, kind of gives you the quantity description, year manufactured, just some inventory or information for those pieces of equipment. Equipment and fleet inspections. Do you do inspections on your equipment? Regular inspections. It's going to help identify any failures and anything identified, of course, for each of those individual pieces of equipment that you looked at. Annual inspection, vehicle inspection. Do you go through and check the brakes? Do you check the rust? Do you check all those things that might be in there? Critical things. It's going to tell you how that piece of equipment is depreciating, whether physically or financially. Daily vehicle driver inspections reports. Again, not everybody has to do them, but going through and just checking that vehicle out every time you use it, or once a week, or whatever it might be. Daily driver vehicle inspection. I worked for UPS for a while. Every time we took a truck out, you'd have to go around and check all the lights, the brakes, anything damaged, both on the way out and on the way in. And that way the maintenance department could take care of any of those defects, so their trucks are legal. Again, not necessarily a bad thing to have daily inspection. It keeps you up to date on any kind of thing. If you start to see hydraulic leaks, brake leaks, or whatever it might be, before they become an issue, you can actually take care of them. Equipment inspection forms as well. We've got those. Those are all in, again, part of that handout, but they're also available if you have any questions, if you want some. So on the pavements, again, a lot of the pavements have evolved over years. Just basically started out as Indian paths and colonial trails, wagon trails. Cars came along to reduce some of the mud and muck and stuff in the spring and the winter and the fall. Basically, they've layered asphalt on them and just built them up over time, expanded them, made them wider. So they're not really designed or built. So they're not going to have the survival ability as you would find in a state road that is actually designed, planned, and laid out with the intent of it lasting 50 to 100 years. So, possibly correcting some of those deficiencies as you can as you go. And again, having a good plan for roads is going to be critical, because it is one of the largest investments that the town has. Not doing it properly might have a problem right here. That looks like they skipped out on the tack code. When you try to save money on 1% of the project and don't put the asphalt, the tack coat down, you end up with these large delamination holes. They're not a lot of fun when you hit them with your car. The pavement service life. For the most part, most pavements, over the 75% of the life of that pavement, those roads are going to be pretty good to fair condition. To maintain them and keep them in good shape, it's going to cost just a low, say $1 per unit cost for maintaining those, keeping them in good shape, sealing them. But once you let it go past that, where the cracks open up, the moisture gets into the base, the pavement starts flexing, then you're into the rehabilitation, reconstruction. That's where the real costs come in. So the idea is basically to catch it before that and seal the road. It's like your house. You find a leak in your ceiling, you don't wait till the ceiling falls out. You take care of that. Again, with local roads, 52% of the local roads are owned by the towns. The city has 11%, village is 6%, county 18%. The state only has 13% of the number of miles of roadways in New York State. So as far as the local ownership is a good portion of the roads that we have in New York. Not everybody runs on the interstate as back and forth. Local roads are done quite a bit. As I mentioned, when it comes down to who finances those roads, that comes down to the local taxpayer, me and you. We all pay for that. So if we can do a better way, do a better process of managing those roads, getting them to last longer, doing just maintenance on them, it's going to be a lot easier on everybody that's paying those taxes. Again, the maintenance decisions, we went through this earlier. Where should it be focused? With roads, it's going to be pretty critical. If you have 10 funding changes, can you react to that? Can you plan around that? Again, what is the most cost-effective maintenance? If the roads aren't in bad shape, you can do a surface treatment. You can get a lot more life out of that road. Doing an asphalt overlay is going to be an expensive treatment when you can just get away with sealing it with a surface treatment. Again, most important, as far as I was just mentioning, if you can do a surface treatment, it's going to be more cost effective to extend that life than it would be for just another asphalt overlay. And then what is the plan for the next 5 years? Looking at it and understanding what you have is going to help. Here's an example. Pavement section was built 12 years ago. It needs a surface treatment today, maybe a slurry seal or a chip seal or an oil and stone, whatever you might call them. It would run you for that road, might run you about $20,000 to do that. No, you don't really have that. You're going to fix the worst road you have. So you put it off for 4 years. Well, that time has taken its toll on that road. Now you're going to have to do some sort of rehabilitation, maybe milling out or some sort of spot repair that's going to cost substantially more. So now it's costing you $60,000 to $80,000, a substantial increase. If you just decide you're going to put it off till later, if you wait too long, now your estimated cost can be $150,000 plus. Again, depending on what the road is and what kind of condition it's in. Again, if we can do the surface treatments, the minimal preventive maintenance techniques, we're going to get a lot more money, a lot more bang for your buck, I should say. It's the old pay me now or you can pay me later. Pavement maintenance is a case of being penny wise and pound foolish. Doesn't make sense to save pennies now and putting off maintenance if those deferred repairs are going to cost you dollars later. As a comparison, that deferred maintenance is like a debt on a very high interest rates. And that seems to be what they are anymore. That debt will have to be paid sometime in the future. And the longer you wait, the more you're going to cost you. So again, just a better plan, a better understanding of what you do is going to be critical. So the basic concept of preventive maintenance, pavement maintenance is keeping good roads good. Decide where you want to keep your level of service, how well you want to keep your roads, and then focus on keeping them above that level. Because you want to avoid that reconstruction, because that's going to cost you much more than the funding that's available. For the preventive maintenance, it's going to cost you $1 per unit versus $10+ per unit. And every year that gap gets wider and wider. But the preventive maintenance, you're keeping that road in good shape. You're sealing it. You're putting another surface on it, giving it some sort of texture on it to keep it good and safe. You can do multiple preventive maintenance techniques over the years. It's going to be substantially cheaper than rebuilding it every 4 or 5 years or 10 years, or whatever it might be. So when it comes to asset management for roads, again, keep it simple. You don't want to overthink it. What you want is a plan that's basically easy to learn. That way it's transferable for the next group of people that may be picking up after you. It's easy. It's a systematic process. It's good and it's organized approach. It's going to be critical. Again, having something that's going to be step by step is going to be easier to follow, easier to learn. Be practical. Taking care of roads and streets is an ongoing real life activity. The management process should be workable and realistic as well. It should be understandable and accepted, understandable by the local board. If they can understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you're doing it, and understand it's part of the process, you're gonna get a lot more support. But if they don't understand what you're doing, you're gonna get pushback. So again, the simple management report, and develop that inventory. We talked about that. Get an inventory, know what your roads are, get the physical attributes, determine the existing conditions, which roads are good, which roads are bad. Again, do it on a network basis. Look at the overall network and to be able to compare it apples to apples and not get carried away with the details. Determine what causes those distresses or the road failures. Is it heavy loads? Is it moisture in the base? Is it just old pavement? Determine what the distress is and then focus on repairing that. Decide what your maintenance options are for that causes of this distress and then work with that. Develop costs for that. Those costs are going to change every year. The cost of material from 10 years ago is substantially different than it's going to be than it is now. So you're going to have to maintain those costs as well as you go through. Then develop a plan. Again, the most critical part is planning it out. Which one's first, which one's last, which ones we're going to just put off. Then interactively select and schedule the projects. And if there's any confusion, just as a little promotion on our end, we have a Cornell, we have a software that we developed based off of another software that was put out many years ago, but this is a Windows-based software, the Cornell Asset Management Program, CAMP as we call it. It's focused on pavements, but we've also added culverts there, and we're looking to add a few more assets as time goes by. But again, it's available to anyone. If you buy the software outright, it'd be $90. That includes all support, all training, any kind of questions you might have, any difficulty you have. We support that. We don't charge after you purchase it. If you're a municipality and you're short on man time or person time abilities or whatever it might be, crew members are short, you just don't have the time to develop something like that. We offer a summer intern program where a summer intern comes and works for the municipality. We teach the summer intern and then we support the summer intern over the 10-week program. And at the end of it, you get a pavement management plan with a report that goes along with each of your roads and identifies, explains. Again, something that you convey to not only the board, but also to the public. And again, it's available to anyone. If you're part of the program, it's only $60. So there's pavement management levels. What we're really talking about is the network level. And that's where you're looking at the whole network of roads in a municipality. Again, you want to compare them apples to apples. Once you decide what your plan is, your 5-year plan is, then you would start looking at the individual projects for that year. And that would be the project level. That's where you're determining what you got to replace. How are the ditches? How are the signs? How are the manhole catch basins? Any kind of crossings or whatever it might be. But again, we're focusing on the network level. Again, keep it simple so you compare the whole network to itself. As part of that network thing, basically, you're going to define limits of each of those roads. How much pavement can you do, or how much repair can you do in one section? So you might have a road that's 10 miles long. You're going to break it into a series of sections, and those, again, finding those limits. You develop that network, that inventory. Each of those segments of roads, you identify what's in them. You go out and survey those distresses. You develop maintenance strategies, then you determine the funding needs, find out what each of those things cost, unit costs, and you want to generalize it. So if you're doing chip seals on 4 roads, if you got a unit price for a chip seal, you can just apply that unit price to the square footage of that road. Again, keep it simple. Once you get to the project level, you can start looking at the minutia and then interactively select and analyze those projects. And then a feedback system, find out what works, what doesn't work. Updating costs. Maybe you want to change certain things about what you're doing. And then the whole goal is to improve the reliability of the system. In project level, that's after you've identified the causes. You want to determine what the right repair is. You want to analyze any kind of other deficiencies in that post. Again, now your individual projects. Again, you want to analyze and design the project requirements and then write a contract and specifications that go along with it. As far as the inventory for roads, if you're really curious and you want to start out at the beginning, basically local road inventory, New York State keeps the local highway inventory on their website. It basically goes by county and then by town. So you can look in there and determine each of the roads, each of the specific attributes of those roads. Again, each one has a specific road identification number, its length, where that section starts and ends, how wide the road is, number of lanes, surface material, type of shoulders. If you've just got a regular gravel or a paved shoulder, that's going to vary in what you can do as opposed to curbs. You start layering up asphalt on curbs, you're going to lose your curb reveal. Traffic, again, how much traffic do you have? You got a lot of cars or very low cars? What type of that traffic do you have? You got a lot of trucks, you got a lot of school buses. That's going to make a difference on how you do those repairs, because some of those roads are going to need more strength. Then, of course, the importance. How important is that roadway to the community? Roadways to the hospital, roadways to the school, they're going to have a lot more importance than it is to one single cul-de-sac that serves 3 people. So again, identifying that's going to help prioritize. This is what you're looking at when you go look at the local road inventory. This is kind of the road, just kind of small, but it tells you basically, it gives you a DOT ID, the name of the street, start of the section, end of the section, beginning mile point, end mile point, total length, number of lanes, pavement width, shoulder width, no median, but again, functional classification. It just kind of goes through there and gives you an idea what those roads are. It might be a good starting place if you're new in the office and you want to know what you have. The condition assessment, again, inspecting these assets is the best way to know what the conditions are. Going out and looking at them. Determines, when you're looking at them, determines what that current condition is. It good, fair, poor? It also, by identifying what the distresses are, can tell you where the specific problems are and possibly what the causes are. It's going to help you determine what that repair should be. And for sources, Federal Highway puts out the distress identification manual. Again, links are on the handout. They don't print it anymore, but it is available in PDF form, so you can download it and keep it handy as you need. Also, our pavement maintenance class. If you've not attended that, this kind of goes through it as well. It's a good opportunity to get to sit down and listen to a professional to describe and go through some of the things that you offer that are there, how to evaluate them, what you're looking at, what some of the repairs are. Again, one of our workshops that's available. Developing repair costs. Again, you want to focus on general repair costs. Now you could start adding in, replace 3 culverts and cut shoulders and pave the ditch, all kinds of things. Again, now you're getting a little bit too deep into it. You're looking at the pavement, the surface pavement. You want to keep it simple. All those details will be dealt with when you go into the project level. So again, you want to try to generalize costs, give you an idea what's going through there. Again, it's an important step. Because you're not going to be able to assess your roads properly on which repairs and where it's going to, what range you're actually going to be able to, it's going to cost you. Again, focus on a general overall repair. Don't get carried away by, writing in every manhole that's got to be upgraded or replaced or reset. Again, the goal is to keep it simple. And then with the costs, because they change on a regular basis, you can update them annually. To help you with those updates, we've actually, David developed this a spreadsheet that's available. It goes in there, you kind of work through it. If you're developing a project, town name, project name. Do you work 10-hour days or 8-hour days? Is all going to be part of that. The length, the width of the road, the length of the road gives you square footage of the road. The labor, different positions have different wages. If you're going to include benefit rate, you can add it there. It's going to total up the hours there, your cost per hour, then your quantity. If you're working 10-hour days and it's going to be X times 10, that's going to give you how much it costs per day per person. The same with equipment. Again, New York DOT actually uses the FEMA rates now instead of creating their own. So that, again, looking at the FEMA rates for use of equipment, you can put that in here. Type of equipment you have, paver, roller, whatever it might be, hourly rate. And then the quantity of hours, how much you're going to use it, and it's going to give you a number per day that's going to cost. It tallies it up and gives you the equipment costs, labor costs. Another page basically allows you to do the same thing. I guess this is the same. You can do it with materials, you can do it with invoice materials. Just kind of go through there and give you an idea what you're doing. And again, it all totals up the front page, basically totals right up. And it's going to give you an actual area to be worked during project, square feet. It's going to give you cost per square foot. It's going to give you a unit price over that total project area. And it goes area, linear, individual, per day, per hour. So again, the spreadsheet will help you tally up what a project's going to cost, give you a better idea where you're going. Again, this is available as well. So developing the plan is pretty much the final, developing a final plan, and again, based on the needs of the roads, it should include several aspects of the inventory and the conditions. If the inventory, traffic and importance are strongly considered when determining the work priority. Again, it's focused on the base roads, the needs of the road. Let's get the words right. Again, using a simple prioritization method, and the goal is basically to keep good roads in good condition. So, no, that just kind of goes through it. And the goal again is to extend that life. You don't want to rebuild those roads every 10 years. It's just cost prohibitive. And as a taxpayer, I appreciate it. So simple prioritization, this is the one we actually use for our software, the CAMP software. Doesn't use cost comparisons because you can be skewed quite a bit by what something's going to cost. Doesn't include future deterioration. There is software out there that does that, but it's highly complex. It's like AutoCAD. Every 3 or 4 years they change. If you don't use it very often, you eventually slip out of use. But it doesn't include any future deterioration. It's easy to modify, easy to update. But our priority formula for the roads and streets section of our CAMP program, essentially, priorities determined by the repair strategy, which could be preventive maintenance, corrective maintenance, that kind of repair strategy, as opposed to, well, not opposed to, but including rehabilitation and reconstruction. It takes the importance of that road to the community, the type of traffic and volume of traffic that's on that specific road. What is the current condition of that road? How is the drainage? And drainage basically is when rainfall hits that road surface, does it run efficiently off of that road, off the shoulder, into the ditches and then away? And that's going to be critical for the life of your road. And then roughness is just an aspect that takes a lot of other things that we're not getting into the minutia for. So again, it's just a simple method of evaluating and prioritizing which road's going to be done first. And typically, the order of the work should be preventive maintenance, routine maintenance, and then corrective maintenance. Those, again, keeping those roads in good shape. Defer work. If your road's good, you don't have to work on it. If your road's really bad, you probably don't want to waste your money on it. Then over time, you can do the rehabilitation and the reconstructions. But again, they're not going to be priority with this, particularly with the software that we use. We focus on keeping good roads good. And then over time, you're going to start to have extra funding available where you're going to be able to do those rehabilitation reconstructions. And these routine preventive and corrective maintenances, they're all in this upper area. They're a lot more affordable. They're a lot easier to maintain. Again, going to keep those roads in good shape. And as I mentioned before, if you're keeping them up here doing that regular maintenance, it's going to cost 1 times per unit, as opposed to once it gets to the failing point, it's going to cost 10+ times more. So the idea is do the right treatment. The old mantra, right treatment at the right place at the right time. Let the distress tell you what it needs. That it's failing for a reason. Focus on what's causing the failure. Fix the disease, not the symptom. Layering over the 2 inches of asphalt looks good for a few years, but long term, it's not really a good investment. The simple network process, as I mentioned, basically is you develop that inventory, and this goes for all of these assets. Develop an inventory, know what you have. Look at their conditions. Are they in good shape? Are they in poor shape? Do they have leaks? Do they have problems? Belt maintenance and rehabilitation alternatives. What's going to correct those things so they last longer? Assign repair alternatives. Prioritize your maintenance, then generate reports, and from that you can generate budgets. And the key thing is implementation. You don't implement it, you've done a lot of nothing. Part of that implementation is communicating with the board. If you've got a an objective plan that's not based on someone's opinion, but based on the needs of the road, it's going to be easier to communicate with the board, particularly with pictures. Scheduling the work is critical. Updating the numbers to reflect the current costs and that kind of stuff is going to be critical. And we mentioned as part of some of the benefits, again, efficient use of limited resources. Again, your resources being your financial ability. If you can focus on spending it and improving them with minimal amounts of funding, you're going to go a long way. Because it's an objective process based on what the failure is or what the problems are, you can substantiate your results. It's not picking favorites when the hydraulic lines are leaking on a loaders. Determine the conditions. Again, you got to know what you have, and then you got to know what condition they're in. Again, because you know all this, particularly with roads, you better communicate your needs to the public and the board. You have more accurate information because you're doing those updates and inspections, and you have improved cooperation, whether it's from the community or the town or the board, or if you're looking for funding. If you've got a plan and you have and you know where you want to be, so you can actually, when you go to get grants or funding, whatever it might be from outside sources, you can substantiate results by explaining what you want to do. We have a plan. We want to do this. We want to do this. We want to do this. Not just going in there say, we want money because we want to pave. Probably not going to get the best results that way. So again, in summary, know what you're responsible for. Know what all your assets are, because you're going to be maintaining them. You're going to be responsible for them. Gather that specific information on each of those assets. Again, have a record of everything. Inspect for current conditions. Do on a regular basis, whether it's signs and tree growth or pavement with cracks. Again, determine what the necessary repairs might be. Determine your available funding. Maybe in some cases, particularly with our students, they do what ifs. If we have another $100,000 a year, we can do this much more work and improve our system in 20 years less. Again, priority is determining what your funding, available funding is, what your funding needs are, and possibly project out what you might want. But again, you're not going to be able to tell what the payment is with a simple plan in the future. It's going to help you prioritize that maintenance, and then of course, implementing it, doing the job. And that kind of that covers a good majority of it. So we'll move into some PDH questions. Amanda, you still on there? Did I put you asleep? Amanda.
Sorry, Jeff.
A network level payment management systems focus on the details of a project to develop a final plan. Is that true or false?
Answers are rolling in.
Again, a network level.
Wait for a few more people to answer before we end the poll. Right.
Have you stopped that?
Yep.
Looks like the numbers stopped.
Yes.
Looks like that's either confusing question or I didn't get the message across. At a network level is basically you're looking at the whole network. Project level, you're looking at individual projects. So that would be actually end up being let's get that out of the way. That would be I lost my click. That would actually be false. Developing final, I guess that's still misleading with the final plan. That might be on me. But details of a project, you're going to focus at project level. Again, you want to kind of keep the network level is an overall general overview of the whole network. All right, we'll go to question 2. Simple asset management process does not include. There are a few things that I mentioned earlier that it should include. Again, simple is the key. It doesn't include which one. Should be easy to learn, a systematic, organized approach, a practical method, be understood and accepted, or predict the futures of conditions. From the results, it looks like I got that match that's true.
We'll wait for a few more answers and then we'll share the results.
So it was predict future conditions. Again, simple. There are more complex ones that'll take into account, again, some of those asset management plans, some of those will do predicting conditions. But the ideal for a simple one is needs to be understood, simple to understand and accept, practical, needs to be organized, a good approach and easy to learn. So the answer for that one was E. Question 3. Pavement management focuses on keeping good roads good. True or false?
Results are in.
All right. Well, answer to that one was true. And the idea is preventive maintenance for that pavement management. Keep those roads in good shape. And they're going to last a lot longer. They're going to be cheaper to maintain. You're going to get the best bang for your buck over the life of that asphalt surface. Question 4. Good inventory is essential for an asset management plan. True or false?
We have true at 94% and false at 6%.
Well, true is the answer. I always seem to miss someone here or there, but a good inventory is essential. You got to know what you have before you can actually plan and project around it. So a good inventory is critical. But there are other alternatives. You know, if you don't want to go to the simple route, AASHTO, the American Association of Highway and Transportation Officials, has this whole program out. They've got these manuals on how to walk through it, and focuses on transportation asset management. Goes through the benefits, the strategy and planning, organization of people, asset performance, resource allocation, monitoring and adjustments. Again, right down into the deep of it all. Again, that's going to take manpower to go through something like that. But again, we're focusing on something simple at this point. And again, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we do have that CAMP software that's available. So if you're interested, don't hesitate. And it's available to anybody who's has an interest. And that'll do it. Thank you. And if you have questions, let us know.
Thanks for hanging out with us today, guys. Have a great day.